Before you ask the world for a partner, ask yourself, are you ready to be one? We live in a world where relationships are often mistaken for transactions. I give you love, you give me validation. But such exchange is temporary. To become superhuman, one must understand that love is not a trade, it is a transformation. Before you seek a strong relationship, you must first build a strong foundation within yourself. Too many people enter relationships hoping another person will complete them, heal them, or give them the sense of purpose they never took the time to develop on their own. This is a path that leads to disappointment, confusion, and suffering. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot lead with love if your heart is not whole. To become superhuman in the realm of love and connection, the journey must begin inward. Self-mastery is not about perfection. It is about awareness, discipline, and alignment. It is about understanding your wounds, owning your emotions, and learning to act from a place of principle rather than reaction. When you do not know yourself, you become a slave to your feelings. When you do not master your emotions, you will try to control others to make yourself feel safe. This is not love. This is fear disguised as affection. The Bible tells us, he who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. What does this mean? It means that the highest form of strength is self-control. To master the self is to become greater than the one who conquers nations. How then can you enter a partnership without first becoming victorious over your own spirit? If your mood controls you, your words will wound the one you claim to love. If your past defines you, your present will always be polluted. Many think love is about passion, chemistry, or compatibility. These are secondary. The first pillar of love is responsibility, not for the other, but for yourself. Are you responsible for your thoughts, your impulses, your patterns? Are you willing to observe yourself even when it hurts? Are you humble enough to admit when you are the one who brought chaos into the relationship? Because love will reveal you. It will mirror your deepest flaws and test your deepest virtues. If you have not prepared yourself to face these tests, you will blame your partner for every reflection you are unwilling to accept. But a superhuman does not run from the mirror. They bow to the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it is. Self-mastery also means discipline in what you allow into your mind and heart. The voices you listen to shape the way you show up in a relationship. If your mind is always consumed by fear, fantasy, or false expectations, you will never be present enough to truly connect. Presence is power, and it is earned through the daily practice of quieting the noise and facing what lives within you. There's a passage that says, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. How often do people enter relationships ready to change the other person, but unwilling to change themselves? How often do they demand understanding without first developing the patience to understand? A person who has mastered themselves brings peace into a relationship. They do not bring emotional storms. They do not manipulate with silence or punish with withdrawal. They communicate clearly, forgive quickly, and correct lovingly. They are not perfect, but they are accountable. And in that accountability, they create safety. Without safety, there is no love, only survival. So remember, before you ask someone to trust you with their heart, ask yourself, have I learned to care for my own? Have I disciplined my reactions, purified my intentions, and learned to serve rather than dominate? Becoming superhuman is not becoming more than others. It is becoming more than who you were yesterday. And in relationships, that is where all transformation begins. In a world that is constantly speaking, constantly moving, constantly demanding attention, the ability to be still has become a rare and powerful skill. In relationships, this stillness becomes even more essential. We often believe that to be effective in love, we must know what to say, how to say it, and when to say it. But real power in relationships does not lie in how well you speak. It lies in how deeply you listen. To become superhuman in your relationships, you must learn the discipline of silence. Not the silence used as a weapon, the kind that punishes or manipulates, but the sacred kind of silence. The kind that creates space for another person's soul to breathe. The kind of silence that says, I'm not just waiting for my turn to speak. I'm here, I hear you, you matter. Listening is not just about hearing words. It is about hearing behind the words, the tone, the hesitation, the unspoken fears and longings that live between the lines. It is about quieting your own mind enough to truly receive someone else's heart. This is what makes a person strong in love, the ability to be fully present, not distracted, not defensive, not waiting to reply, but simply still. This stillness is echoed in scripture. In Psalm 46:10, it says, "Be still and know that I am God." Stillness is where clarity is born. Stillness is where love is recognized and pain is understood. If you cannot be still with yourself, you will struggle to be still with another. If your mind is always racing, always judging, always calculating, then your presence will never feel safe to someone who is emotionally open. Stillness is not passivity. It is a choice to trust the moment, to observe rather than react, and to hold space without needing to fix everything immediately. Sometimes the person you love doesn't need advice. They need presence. Sometimes they don't need answers. They need your stillness to become the mirror in which they see themselves clearly again. The reason most relationships break down is not due to a lack of love, but a lack of understanding. And the reason understanding is so rare is because listening has become a lost art. But when you learn to listen with your whole being, your eyes, your body, your silence, then you become someone others feel safe with. And where there is safety, there is growth. Proverbs 18:13 says, "To answer before listening, that is folly and shame." How many arguments begin not because of what was said, but because someone failed to listen long enough to understand? How many hearts have closed because the other person was more interested in defending their view than in understanding someone else's experience? To become superhuman in your relationships is to develop the strength to restrain your reaction and offer stillness instead. It is to sit with discomfort, to hold back judgment, to pause before responding. This kind of presence is healing. It tells the other person, I don't just love your smile, I honor your pain. I don't just enjoy your good days, I make space for your storms. You become superhuman, not through your ability to dominate a conversation, but through your ability to disappear in it. To become so quiet that the other person feels heard in a way they never have before. That kind of listening is rare. That kind of stillness is sacred. In relationships, it is not noise that builds connection, it is depth, and depth is found in silence. Just as seeds grow beneath the surface, love grows in the quiet moments when two people sit together, not needing to say everything, but understanding everything just by being truly present. So slow down, silence the noise, practice stillness, and learn to listen not just with your ears, but with your heart. That is where true connection begins. That is where superhuman love is born. Love in its highest form is not a transaction. It is not a checklist of exchanged behaviors or mutual benefits. It is not a marketplace where we trade affection for attention or loyalty for convenience. True love is not measured by what you get, but by what you are willing to give without needing anything in return. That is where love becomes transformational. We live in a world that constantly whispers, "What's in it for me?" Relationships are entered with expectations that sound reasonable, but are rooted in self-centered thinking. If I love you, you must love me the same way. If I stay loyal, you must never fail me. If I give, I expect something equal in return. This mindset turns love into a contract, a fragile agreement that breaks the moment one clause is violated. But love, as it is defined in spiritual truth, is not contractual. It is covenantal. A covenant is not based on convenience. It is based on commitment. It's not rooted in feelings which come and go, but in faithfulness which endures. The Bible speaks clearly in 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. These words describe a love that is not reactive or conditional. They describe a love that transforms both the one who gives and the one who receives it. When you approach love as a transaction, you keep score, you measure affection, you withhold forgiveness until apologies are delivered. You only give when you feel like the other deserves it. But when you live that way, your love never grows. It remains shallow, easily shaken, always on edge. One mistake becomes a debt. One shortcoming becomes a deal breaker. But when you choose to love beyond conditions, when you choose to love as an act of spiritual discipline, then love transforms everything it touches. It transforms pain into healing. It transforms fear into safety. It transforms the broken into the whole. This kind of love changes not just your relationship, it changes you. It burns away pride, dissolves ego, and purifies intention. It teaches you how to show up fully, even when you don't feel like it. Transformation begins when you give love, not as a reaction, but as a reflection of your character, your integrity, and your alignment with something higher than yourself. When you love in this way, you are not dependent on the other person's behavior to remain committed. You are rooted in principle, not performance. And that makes your love unshakable. This is not weakness. It is not naivety. It is strength. It is wisdom. Only those who are secure in themselves can love like this. Only those who are healed can stop demanding that someone else carry the weight of their worth. You become superhuman not by loving perfectly, but by loving intentionally, from a place of maturity, not need. Romans 12:9 says, "Let love be without hypocrisy, abhor what is evil, cling to what is good." That kind of love does not just say the right words, it becomes the right presence. It doesn't manipulate, it liberates. It doesn't control, it empowers. It doesn't demand, it offers. In relationships, if you are always asking what you are owed, you will miss the deeper question, what am I called to give? When both people ask this question, not out of duty, but out of devotion, then love becomes a fire that refines rather than consumes. So do not enter love as a buyer in a market. Enter it as a servant of truth, as a keeper of peace, as a steward of someone else's heart. Give not to receive, but to elevate. Love not for gain, but for growth. Because in the end, the love that changes lives is not the love that counts cost, but the love that chooses to give even when no one is counting. Feelings are real, but they are not always reliable. They shift like the wind, high one moment, low the next. In relationships, if your love is built solely on how you feel, it will crumble the moment the weather of your emotions changes. But when your love is rooted in faith, it gains the power to endure storms, not just bask in the sunlight. To become superhuman in your relationships, you must learn to live by faith over feeling. In the beginning of many relationships, everything feels magical. You are drawn to each other. Every conversation feels alive. Every touch feels meaningful. But what happens when the excitement fades? What happens when conflict arises? When misunderstandings occur? When routine begins to settle in? If you are led only by feeling, you may start to believe that the love is gone. But love does not vanish. It matures. And maturity is the space where faith is required. Faith is choosing to stay committed even when emotions waver. It is the belief in the goodness of your partner, even when they disappoint you. It is the trust in the process of growth, even when growth is slow and uncomfortable. The Bible tells us in Hebrews 11:1, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." In love, there will be days where you don't see the results yet, but faith allows you to stay present, to keep building, to keep watering the soil of your relationship, even when nothing has bloomed yet. Too many people walk away from love too quickly because they confuse temporary emotional droughts with permanent loss. They think, "I don't feel the spark anymore, so maybe this isn't right." But true connection isn't measured by constant excitement, it's measured by consistent investment. Feelings are the weather. Faith is the foundation. If the foundation is weak, any storm will destroy what you've built. Emotions were given to us by God as signals, not as masters. They reveal what's happening inside of us, but they are not always telling us the whole truth. Sometimes your fear will scream louder than your love. Sometimes your insecurity will tell you to pull away when you really need to lean in. This is why a superhuman lover is not guided by impulse. They are anchored in principle, in trust, in patience, in loyalty. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Faith in a relationship means you plant seeds every day. Seeds of respect, kindness, forgiveness, and communication, even when it feels like nothing is changing. It means you believe that the harvest will come, not because it feels good now, but because love is being tended to, even in silence. You will not always feel connected. You will not always feel seen. But if you are both rooted in faith, you will keep showing up. You will keep loving even when it's hard. And that love becomes something holy, not just emotional, but spiritual. That kind of love doesn't fade. It grows deeper. Faith also means trusting in what you're building together. Trusting that even through conflict, there is progress. That even when you don't feel close, you are becoming stronger. That even when it feels like you are drifting, there is an anchor holding you both in place, if you choose to hold on. Becoming superhuman in love requires emotional awareness, but not emotional slavery. You must feel deeply, but act wisely. You must acknowledge your emotions, but not allow them to govern your commitment. Let your feelings visit, but let your faith lead. Because in the end, those who live by feeling chase moments, but those who live by faith build legacies. True strength in a relationship is not shown in how loud you can speak, how fast you can win an argument, or how well you can defend your pride. It is shown in how gently you can carry someone else's heart, especially when they are hurting, especially when they are wrong, especially when they are vulnerable. Gentleness is not weakness. In fact, in the emotional and spiritual dimension of love, gentleness is one of the highest forms of strength. In a world that rewards sharpness, dominance, and power games, it may seem unnatural to choose softness. But the superhuman does not conform to the ways of the world. The superhuman recognizes that what breaks most relationships is not a lack of passion or ambition, it is the absence of gentleness. When you are not gentle, your words become weapons. Your silence becomes punishment. Your strength becomes intimidation. But when you are gentle, your presence becomes healing. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 15:1, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." This is not just wisdom, it is strategy. Gentleness diffuses tension. It invites openness. It creates space where honesty can breathe. But harshness, even when it is technically right, pushes love away. It makes the other person feel unsafe, judged, or silenced. And where there is no emotional safety, intimacy cannot exist. Gentleness is not just how you speak. It is how you look at someone, how you touch them, how you listen, how you respond when they are at their weakest. It is the decision to lower your voice when everything in you wants to yell. It is the maturity to pause and breathe instead of reacting in anger. It is the humility to remember that the person you love is not your opponent, they are your companion. Superhuman love requires you to master your power. Gentleness is not the absence of power. It is power under control. It is like a sword in a sheath, ready when needed, but not drawn recklessly. You can be firm without being cruel. You can be honest without being harsh. You can correct without condemning. The balance between truth and tenderness is what transforms relationships from survival into sanctuary. Many people say they want love, but few are willing to develop the qualities that sustain it. Gentleness requires emotional discipline. You cannot be gentle when you are ruled by your ego. Ego wants to win. Ego wants to dominate. Ego wants to be heard at all costs. But love wants to understand. Love wants to lift up, not tear down. Jesus, the most powerful man to walk the earth, described himself as gentle and lowly in heart. And yet he changed lives, healed wounds, and transformed the course of history, not through force, but through compassion. That is the model of strength we are called to embody in our relationships. When your partner fails, can you respond with gentleness? When they confess something difficult, can you make them feel safe rather than ashamed? When they need support more than solutions, can you offer your presence without pressure? These are the quiet moments that build trust, and trust is the soil in which love grows deep roots. Gentleness also means being tender with yourself. When you make mistakes, when you fall short, when you don't show up as your best, how do you speak to yourself? Because the way you treat your own heart is often the way you will treat others. If you are hard on yourself, you will struggle to extend grace. But if you learn to be gentle within, you become a fountain of gentleness for those around you. To become superhuman in love is not to become tougher. It is to become softer in the right places. It is to hold others with care, even when they are difficult to hold. It is to move through conflict with calm. It is to be a shelter, not a storm. And in a world full of noise and battles, that kind of love is not only rare, it is sacred. Love is not tested in the moments when everything is going well. It is tested in the fire. It is tested in the storms, in the silence, in the disappointment, in the space between expectation and reality. That is where you discover whether your connection is based on shallow emotions or deep spiritual alignment. Commitment in love is not about staying when it is easy. It is about staying when it is hardest. Not because you feel like it, but because your word is sacred. That is what separates the ordinary from the superhuman. In today's world, relationships are treated like temporary agreements. When it's good, we stay. When it gets tough, we leave. The moment we are not understood, not appreciated, not admired, we begin to pull away. We label the discomfort as toxic, when often it is simply a call to grow. True commitment, however, is a decision made not in response to convenience, but in honor of covenant. It is choosing to stand firm, not because the other person is perfect, but because you made a promise to build together. In Ecclesiastes 4:9-10, the scripture says, "Two are better than one. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But how can that help happen if one always walks away when the other falls? How can love flourish if our loyalty is only as strong as our partner's last good day?" Superhuman love is not just romantic. It is resilient. It doesn't quit at the first sign of difficulty. It doesn't treat wounds with blame. It treats wounds with presence, with care, with perseverance. Every deep relationship will go through valleys, seasons of miscommunication, unmet needs, emotional distance, even hurt. These valleys are not signs of failure. They are invitations to dig deeper, to look beyond the surface, to confront your own fears, wounds, and expectations, to become more than you were when you first fell in love. A relationship is not meant to remain in its beginning stages. It is meant to evolve, and evolution requires pain. Commitment is not just about staying, it's about growing while staying. You don't get to wait until everything is right to be all in. You become all in, and then you work through what's not right. You take responsibility for your own healing and you offer support for theirs. This is how two imperfect people build something unshakable. Love is not sustained by emotion alone, it is sustained by decision. A daily choice to show up, a daily choice to forgive, a daily choice to communicate with grace, and yes, a daily choice to stay, not because the situation is always enjoyable, but because the vision is worth it. You are not just loving a person as they are, you are loving the future you're creating together. There will be days when walking away seems easier. There will be times when your feelings say, "Why am I still doing this?" And it is in those moments that your commitment is refined, not by force, but by alignment. You remember your why. You remember who you want to be. You remember the promise you made, not just with your mouth, but with your life. Jesus said in Matthew 19:6, "What God has joined together, let no one separate." That includes your own doubts, your own pride, your own impatience. Superhuman love honors the bond, not blindly, but boldly. Bold enough to have hard conversations, bold enough to forgive, bold enough to begin again, as many times as necessary. To commit is not to lose your freedom, it is to direct your freedom towards something eternal. It is to take your power and say, "I choose to stay, I choose to fight, I choose to love, not just when it feels good, but because I said I would." Because in the end, anyone can love when it's easy. But it takes someone uncommon, someone superhuman, to love when it's hard and still remain true. To become superhuman is not to escape your humanity. It is to master it. It is to rise above the reactive, the fragile, and the self-serving patterns that weaken love and relationships. It is to choose depth over drama, faith over feeling, and principle over pride. We live in a world that moves quickly, speaks loudly, and loves conditionally. But to walk the higher path, the path of inner mastery, is to slow down, to listen deeply, and to love without needing control. It is to stay when it's hard, speak with gentleness when you're angry, give even when you feel empty, and grow even when you're hurt. Love is not just an emotion to enjoy. It is a responsibility to carry. It is not just about how someone makes you feel, but about who you become in their presence. You do not become superhuman by demanding perfect partners. You become superhuman by becoming a peaceful warrior, steady, disciplined, faithful, and full of grace. Let your relationships become your training ground. Every argument, a lesson in humility. Every silence, a call to deeper understanding. Every wound, an opportunity for healing. If you choose to walk this path with awareness, with reverence, and with commitment, not only will your love survive the storms, it will transcend them. The goal is not perfection. The goal is presence. The goal is peace. The goal is love, unshakable, unbreakable, and divinely rooted. That is the way. That is the becoming. That is how you rise.